As of 2021, World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV are the titans of the MMO genre. I've been playing World of Warcraft on and off since 2008. Because of the game's design decisions, lack of socialization within the game and the player-unfriendly systems, it has been a lot more off than on as the years went by. There's more to it, but that's another topic on its own. I started playing Final Fantasy XIV in 2018 during the Stormblood expansion. Since then, it has become my main MMORPG. I hate some parts of Final Fantasy XIV, and the same goes for WoW. In this video, I will discuss the problems and the possible solutions to some of the pitfalls of Final Fantasy XIV. I'm usually not the person who will be interested in an MMO story. There can be some exception to the rule, of course, but the focus on the story in Final Fantasy XIV and the lack of good storytelling in WoW makes it hard to ignore this aspect. Both games are trying to tell a story. Ultimately, Final Fantasy XIV does a better job at telling a story that is better on its own, in my opinion. In Final Fantasy XIV, it's very clear to me that the writers do plan a long-term story. A good example would be a character in a Realm Reborn storyline that later becomes a major character in the main story of the Shadowbringers expansion. The real world difference between the release of that storyline and the release of the Shadowbringers expansion is roughly 5 years. It's unclear if they planned this from the beginning, but the dedication is apparent. However, Final Fantasy XIV's story does not make me feel like my character or the world around me are in any danger at any moment. One of the best parts of the video games as an interactive media is the fact that the story can be integrated into the gameplay. There's a good example in World of Warcraft. The Teldrassil tree is gone due to Sylvanas burning it down in Battle for Azeroth expansion. No matter how much you hate story in WoW, it's a consequence to the game events and it keeps the open world fresh. The tree is gone and it means that no zone is potentially safe. There are no stakes when you watch a cutscene with your hands off the keyboard and knowing that nothing will change after you exit that cutscene. There is a stale state of combat in Final Fantasy XIV. You're playing your job the same way throughout the expansion. Nothing changes your rotation. What you got at the beginning of the expansion is what you get for the rest of the expansion. If we compare it to World of Warcraft, they used to have tier sets or similar systems that changes the way your class plays after each raid tier. This is one of the ways to keep the combat fresh. But in my opinion, the worst aspect of combat is the fact that this game takes away your abilities when you're doing a low-level dungeon or a raid. In my opinion, this is the worst offense, and I do not understand how it's still in the game. Due to this fact, leveling your alt job can be a chore, because what the game is actually doing is taking away your character progression. This character regression should never be a part of this genre. I'm not going to talk a lot about the well-known 2.5 second GCD timer in Final Fantasy XIV, because I think the combat improvement can still be implemented without making the GCD shorter. I don't think anyone will disagree that the raid environments in World of Warcraft are gorgeous. They are always very different from each other and each one has a different theme. Unfortunately, Final Fantasy XIV raids are 4 platforms per tier. Yes, the fights are very well designed, but it's hard to care about a platform with the boss for the entirety of the tier. In my eyes, more effort or alternative solutions are needed. What I propose is make Alliance Raid Savage difficulty, downscale it to 8 man and keep the previous quote-unquote platform fights casual. Basically swap their roles. I also feel like the sorry state of dungeons of Final Fantasy needs reinvention. The 2 packs boss, 2 packs boss, 2 packs final boss structure of Final Fantasy is very old and repetitive. Every dungeon follows this rule. Sometimes Square Enix changes it up, but it's rare. I honestly don't know why every dungeon follows this rule, but in my opinion it definitely hurts the light party 4-man content of the game. Why not increase the amount of bosses for some dungeons and reduce for others? They don't necessarily have to be shorter or longer. Mythic Plus is good. Final Fantasy players are asking for some sort of Mythic Plus alternative for quite some time now. After doing a dungeon in Final Fantasy once or twice, the consecutive runs feel like a chore. Current Extreme Roulette only has 2 dungeons in its rotation. Making affixes from Mythic Plus to change things up is one of the ways to make the dungeons feel less repetitive. Also, there is a risk element of Mythic Plus. If you fail your Mythic key, you are done. Overcoming a challenge with a risk-reward tied into it will always feel better. I guess that's it. I explained my biggest issues with the game. I feel like there is a lot more praise of the game than critique, and that's why I did this. There are a lot more stuff to talk about, of course, like some items on the mock station, the possibilities to improve the UI, the basically non-existent PvP, which is a separate discussion on its own, and so on. Leave a comment if you have anything to add, and thanks for watching.